Hi, everyone. As Gareth said, thank you for the introduction. My name is Will, and I'm presenting today about some work that I did while a GIS intern at the City of Columbia. So we're going to be talking about base maps today, and particularly vector tiles. And so I'll just get right into some context of this project, and then we'll go over an overview of what the project is. So to start with some context, before this project, the city had its own existing in-house created raster base maps, which were cached quarterly, often worse than that. They're inflexible due to that timeline and also sitting as raster. It was raster tiling of vector data, so then those are huge and slow for the client. But also there was definitely a desire for modernization. Here's some screenshots of what this looked like when I kind of started this project. So I was really able to get in and kind of start playing with vector tiles. So yeah, I already talked about some of these goals here, but to move to vector and technically to serve as a PBF instead of a PNG, which is so much lighter and more performant. Oh, I totally should have started a stopwatch. Whoops. Sorry about that. Okay. And then to modernize the look and feel, but also to produce a scripted creation and update process through this. So while a lot of this talk today is going to talk about some cartographic design tips, a lot of my focus was also on scripts, which you'll be able to see on my GitHub repo that bring all of this through the entire workflow. Yeah, there's some stuff on vector tiles. So here's an overview of my process, and I'll break this down as we go through. So we start with first-party GIS data. I'm not super talking about this today, but just know that there's an enterprise SDE behind the scenes since everything at the city is within the ArcGIS ecosystem. So then we pull that into Pro and do some styling, and the vast majority of styling does occur in Pro, with the exception of there's some additional JSON that gets inputted by a script later on, and we'll get into that as to why that needs to occur in that way. Then, and I have my little red toolbox because it's just the straight up ArcGIS geoprocessing tool to create vector tiles, which creates the VTPK, which is basically a little SQLite database that's holding all the tiles, but also you can just unzip that, and that has all your style information as well. So that's really what my script works with. And this is all through Python, and then we publish that to AGL and update and make style changes in that way. And then that gets consumed in a front end. In our case, that was in a web map, and then maybe in an experience builder, in a dashboard, something like that. But certainly there is some option of this is just a platform. You could have hosted these elsewhere, or even hosting on AGL, you can pull them in somewhere else as well. So to start with some basemap styling, so here are some screenshots of the styles that we created. There are 8 total, 5 of which are live as of right now. And my primary focus was on light, dark, and hybrid. But then there's also, like, we mirrored ESRI's high contrast for accessibility, and then general is kind of a legacy that we mirrored and moved over to vector. So just an idea there. For some style inspiration, I really wanted to go off kind of industry standards. I mean, I think there's some validity to kind of meeting users with what they're already used to, using other maps and then bringing that to the city. So looking at being ESRI specific, looking at ESRI's light gray canvas, not only did this inform some of the style, but also their reference in base then turned into base versus labels in our tile nomenclature, so that we could split this and have any operational layer you add slides right between. So you still have your labels showing up on top of your features in your web map in this way, and we'll get into later kind of how the tiles are split, and some customization that is afforded through that. I don't have a slide on this, but I also wanted to mention Maputnik is super useful. It's kind of overwhelming, but you can pull in any open source style, like, for example, the AWS standard style, and both look at it visually, and that was super informative to kind of see which features they're using and how they're arranging things in a hierarchy. But also, you can go and look at their expressions and the JSON expression to see how they're varying the sizes of things. Since I want to perceptually keep, like, a label size pretty similar as I'm zooming in and out. How do I actually get that to look that way? So now I'll move into some stuff about setting up the project. So this is one of those things where I'm going to tell you to do this. I didn't do this enough, but I would say start off, go into ArcGIS Online, grab a scale for a zoom, or you kind of write all of them down because I'm trying to think how you see the zoom that you are on, but regardless, you can then divide by 2 to reflect all of your zoom scales, and then put those in as the scale stops in Pro, so then you can make sure, okay, this feature is disappearing at zoom 15, this one's appearing at zoom 10, so that it reflects, and just know that this is projection dependent. So we were doing everything in Missouri State Plain Central, but of course, if you're in whatever local projection or Web Mercator, they will look a little different. This is the huge one, is using scale-based sizing for line weights and font sizing. And this is really what allows me to do most of the styling in Pro, is the inclusion of this. And this project kind of spanned a few years as I interned a few different times. And this was afforded by a newer version of Pro that allowed sizing on, I forget if it was either the lines or on the fonts, but this will be converted in the style sheet to a JSON expression. And it does, this is where it's nice to have set your scales, because otherwise what I did was I picked like 1 to 10,000, 1 to 5,000, and it'll convert as like, oh, at zoom stop 11.25 or something. Like it'll be some weird value that doesn't necessarily make sense. But regardless, the idea is here that you set your zoom stops, you set your different sizing, and that will make your vector tiles look a whole lot better. So layer structure, and this is not just for me to be able to see, but also the script depends on having things set up in a certain way. So on the left, I have a map that, so how we set this up in Pro is we have all these different maps. Any map that just has a name with no prefix, that is like our core tile. And so what that means is that's the tile that's holding the base data. A user's never seeing that, but that's uploaded to ArcGIS Online. And then any style extends off of that. So it's really pointing back at that base data. So then we can just update that base instead of having to update. So say we had 8 base maps, we have our 7 core tiles. Those get updated weekly. Each of the styles goes and looks at that. So we don't have to update 49 or whatever tiles on a weekly interval. So then the names here, where this map is called built labels, that's associated with this group layer entitled built labels. And so the script kind of deals with that to drop the names back to get rid of the, like otherwise it'd be labels / built labels, whatever. It deals with getting rid of that. And then we use this X prefix to denote any base maps, and so the script is looking for that as it runs through. So here's kind of a visual. What the style looks like here at the top for core natural labels doesn't actually matter, but this was kind of our nomenclature, and then the 3 styles there at the bottom are being dynamically restyled. Something important to note here, and for some reason we didn't have trails on the hybrid, don't remember why, but you can conditionally like exclude features that you want from the tile by just not putting them in the style sheet. And then as far as I'm concerned, they don't even render. So that's super helpful, and I don't have a slide on that, but that's super helpful for customization, not only when you're designing this, but then if you are an end user, if you wanted to edit the style sheet, I guess build this so that you have flexibility, because if you were to have like all your features in one layer, I can't use a query to query out certain things. ESRI just kind of bundles things weirdly. So otherwise, if they're separate layers, you can selectively drop those layers out. So about that, mirror your SQL queries across, if you're setting this up like I am, where you have the base data somewhere and then all the styles, I can't subquery off of it. I have to drop layers out. Instead, organize your layers as I did in those screenshots, use that scale-based sizing, and then denote basemap separately. And that is just a thing of how my script works, but of course you could do that differently. All right, so then we'll move on to talking about creating and publishing. So I really just, in this section, I really have some tips as to things to change while creating, but all of there's several scripts that you can look through later that have more detail about how the actual creation process works. But one issue here is a lot of the things you'll do in Pro, it doesn't really do a great job of telling you what is then ultimately supported in a vector tile versus not. So there's a lot of trial and error to figure that out. For example, trying to do a gradient stroke, I think it's still called a gradient stroke, like across the stroke to kind of have almost a drop shadow effect, just produces whatever this is. And so, I mean, the fix here really is just to totally avoid that at this time at least. And also fonts are a thing, so we ended up using, I think we're using basically exclusively Open Sans for everything, but whatever font is bundled, like whatever font is in use in your Pro project, that's what gets bundled into the tile. It doesn't pull like any system font. So if then in a style I'm trying to call, say, Avenir, it just doesn't know what that is. So as long as you've used it somewhere in your project, then it will pull. But that's really important to know when trying to use custom fonts. One note here on the ESRI's vector tile style editor. It's useful, kind of. I also don't really like working in the style sheet as much as I can. I really tried to do most of the cartography visually in Pro because I found that a lot easier, but it is helpful. This is what it looked like every time I opened it, and I don't know if that's a bug or what happened, but I would always have to just use the geolocator in the top right and search for a known address, and then it would zoom to my features, and then I could see, and that was kind of helpful to then I could play with certain JSON expressions. So yeah, on that note, styles get most of the way there, but there are some things that just aren't supported in Pro that are in the style, and ESRI's relied heavily on the Mapbox style spec. So there's some good, I was reading through the Mapbox documentation as I was working on this to find which expressions and things were supported. So one such case is varying transparency by zoom. So I wanted to mirror kind of what Google does, wherein when you have a hybrid base map and you zoom in, the road layer gets more and more transparent and eventually disappears. You still have your labels, but that is just not supported. So I had originally made like 3 separate layers that then disappear and all that, but that is just a JSON expression that I can say 0 to 1 opacity at a certain zoom stop. Similarly, text padding, so I honestly still would like to do more on labeling. Labeling is just a lot, but varying the amount that the text is padding from each other, so I don't have tons of road labels when I'm zooming all the way in. That's another thing that the labeling engine in Pro can do, but then it converts weirdly, so that's another one that I just inject by the script directly. And then let's talk about consuming this in a map. What I do here is, so I end up publishing all this stuff to ArcGIS Online, and so you'll put the VTPK up there, you'll create a service off of that, and then, so that's for that base data. But then any of the other styles just are like a hosted tile layer that it's like a few kilobytes. It really doesn't hold much data at all, and it knows that it's pointing back to that base data in another item. And so you'll set up an actual web map that you add all your different tile layers into, save that, and that becomes the base map. Once it's added to the Basemap gallery group within our organization, that then becomes the base map that then you can go into the Basemap gallery and grab that base map in. So, but then under the hood, that's what this looks like, that we've added 7 different tile layers that we've renamed just so that they make more sense. And now I'll give you a little bit of customization. So this is geared toward end users that are making maps with these base maps that have been created. So this is what it looks like. I've just popped open, like once you've selected a map from the Basemap gallery, the one that you have selected, you can click on it. And then once you've clicked that, that's what I see here. I can see all my layers within my base map. So say we start with the light base map. Okay, I'll add a road layer, but I can't read my road labels. So this isn't particularly like, okay, actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's just do this. So instead, I'll add hybrid road labels because I know that that is another basemap style that we have, and because we've split this into our 7 different layers, I can just add the hybrid road labels here. I've turned off my light road labels, and now that's a lot readable. It's not perfect, but that was a really simple plug-and-play solution where I didn't have to go and create a restyle or rely on ArcGIS Online's kind of terrible feature labeling. But one thing to note here, though, is that I wish that the vector style editor allowed me to like take one that I've published and then make some style edits, because then it'll force a save as and save a new tile. But I had real issues doing that, so I really I don't have the most customization ever. But at the very least, this allows you to kind of make changes amongst the styles that do exist to pull some of those across. So to wrap up, pro styling can get you most of the way there, and that's what I was really excited about with this process, is that I didn't have to just stare at a JSON the entire time. And yeah, check out my GitHub repo. I have a QR code here in a second for my scripted process. And try to leave room for user customization. I think that was a cool way of doing this, because otherwise we could have bundled this all into one vector tile, which would be smaller. Each tile is, I don't know, 10 to 20 megabytes. It kind of depends on how much data you have in there. And of course, for our scale, since we're just a city scale, that ends up being smaller than if I was trying to do some state or country or world project. But at any rate, splitting those out really allowed it to not only be more understandable, but also allow for more flexibility. So thank you. Here's my QR code. I will be updating the GitHub with more README stuff. Do I have time for questions? Yes. Cool. All right. Anyone have any questions?
Any questions for Will?
I'm just going to ask, do you find that splitting it into those like 7 different layers has like an impact on load time when you're loading the finished map?
Not really, and I think it probably is just because, and honestly, that presentation that Kate just gave, I need to like take some of that into a mental note, because I really didn't do a whole lot of pre-processing with the data, so I'm really relying on ESRI's like whole algorithm, I guess, to how the tiles get split. But yeah, at least in our use case, it really didn't matter that much. One note is if you want to take these offline, you do need to bundle it into one, so we worked on that as well, so then that could be taken over to field maps. But yeah, honestly, the performance was not a huge problem. And I'd look at the network tab, and you'd be panning and zooming and maybe load 5 or 10 megabytes or something, which was acceptable for what we were doing. But yeah, if you're really chasing client performance, then yeah, I would probably bundle it smaller, but it wasn't a huge issue.